Hi guys, welcome to Syncromystic Episode 6. I'm Wayne McRoy. This is my good friend Richard Willett, and together we're here to decipher the synchromystic metadata that we see circulating out there in the ether today to relate to many of the things going on in the world and how the occult principles have been utilized to bring about the changes that those dark controllers at the top would like to see. Now, our mission here is to help people to be able to decipher some of what they see and be able to analyze and apply this knowledge to the things going on around them to see what it is that the true intentions are behind the scenes with much of this. Welcome, Richard. Good to see you as always, my friend. Anything to add here before we get started?
Good to see you as always as well. I look forward to this every couple of weeks doing these because this is the stuff that people need to know to decipher and understand really what's going on. Without this understanding, this occult and esoteric understanding, what you're looking at looks random or even looks kind of sane in a way. But with this understanding behind it, you can clearly see that there is something very, very dark going on, especially as you say, it all leads back to transhumanism. And we'll be talking today about not so much the Stargate project, but what the Stargate actually is and what they mean when they're talking about the Stargate. And I've not heard anyone other than yourself actually talking about what the actual Stargate is. So I suppose we'll start there. When what is the Stargate in terms of the esoteric principles behind it?
Well, in order to understand this, we need to look back at some of the concepts that are present in occultism. And in order to understand that, we also need to look at the Holy Bible, because the Holy Bible tells us in no uncertain terms what this is really all about. And when you look at the esoteric concepts behind it, you begin to understand that the Stargate, in and of itself, is the human being. We are the gateway between worlds, and the Bible does inform us, know ye not that ye are the temple of God. And that's where the Spirit of God resides, is within us in the temple, and we are the temple. It's not an actual physical place or location, as many people sometimes mistake it, and how it's presented in Judaism with their whole concept of rebuilding Solomon's temple. Well, the human being is the temple. The human being is the gateway between worlds. The human being is the Stargate. And many in the occult understand this concept, and they have attempted through the course of various time periods to use different types of magical workings to bring into incarnation here, a type of being that does not belong here naturally, using the human being as the gateway to get there. So the human being is the Stargate. And this is what you won't hear discussed in much of the circles discussing the actual technical types aspects of this Stargate project that they've been circulating. This is more on the occult side, and this is more of the hidden language, the twilight language being inculcated here against the minds of the masses. The archetype is present. So it's all about transhumanism at the end of the day, because that's the ultimate goal of transhumanism, is to open the Stargate and let something else in. Now, I know this sounds like a bridge too far for some people, but I assure you, at the topmost levels of the power structure in this world, those dark occultists who know some things, that is certainly what they're looking for. And they have attempted in the past to develop this idea in ways that may not be so technological in our modern view as we look back. These are concepts like the concept of the moon child or the homunculus of alchemical thought. And this is exactly what they're trying to build and engineer the human body into, using AI as a tool to get there, and combining the AI with the human being to create this Stargate so that this other spiritual presence that doesn't belong in this world can step in. And there's different terms that have been used to describe this stepping in process. of a spirit that does not belong here into incarnation in a human form or a semi-human form and manifesting here physically in this reality in that way. And this is an abomination to the Lord God Almighty, the creator of this place. So when this does happen, and many a dark magician has attempted to do this. So this is something that is as old as time itself, but yet now they've found new technological ways to try to pull this off. So when you look at the term magic and you look at it from a more modern perspective, you could simply call it causal engineering. And that would make you probably more comfortable in the modern scientific paradigm in describing some of this. These things work. They have known formulae that they use to bring about different changes in this reality using these magical systems. And this is all well documented and recorded in grimoires and various things like that through the course of time within the realms of occultism and within these secret societies and occult fraternities. They know a lot of this, and they've been passing down a lot of these methods from time immemorial. So it's important to understand that there's an operating system that they've used that they call magic. And you could look at this from all different perspectives because there's different branches of this magic that they've been able to wield through the course of the centuries. And now we're looking at a more technological type component to this with this whole push for artificial intelligence. And what is the spirit behind this artificial intelligence? That's the question we need to ask, because there's always a spiritual component, as much as the materialists would like to deny that. There's always something behind it. There's a spirit of manifestation behind it that starts in some higher world or lower world somewhere and begins to manifest here. And many of these spiritual entities, intelligences, beings, forces, whatever you want to refer to it as, they want nothing more than to be able to manifest in some human type form here so that they could experience this 3D reality that we live in. They seek to do that, and they want to be the gods of this place, of this 3D material reality we live in, and they want to be able to exist here permanently in an immortal type state, physically separated from the divinity, from God, and be the gods of this place themselves. And like I said, I know this probably sounds like a bridge too far for a lot of people out there, but I assure you, these are the intentions of those dark occultists at the topmost levels of the power structure in this world. Now, there's their underlings, which I like to refer to as the technocrats that run around and actually do a lot of the dirty work, not knowing what they're contributing to. And that's only a small portion of the power structure in this place. Those are the chess pieces being moved on the board. So when we keep all that in mind, we could understand a little better this concept of what this Stargate program's really about. So I'd love to hear your thoughts here, Richard.
Yeah, that's what's fascinating to me is that obviously everybody's talking about AI and it being that kind of portal kind of thing, but not really understanding that what it's trying to replicate or hijack is probably the better word is the human body. And then there's the creative element of that and the soul element, which is even deeper there that I want to discuss with you because it kind of almost implies pushing out of the way of a kind of creative connection or human soul in there. And I believe that this is what that I from the research I've done that this is what Epstein was part of, whether he knew it or not. Now, I've interviewed people that have woke up paralyzed and naked underneath Zorro Ranch, and you know that Dulce Base and Los Alamos National Laboratories there, the Church of Spiritual Technology is there under New Mexico, which is the vaults for Scientology. You've obviously got the Roswell crash and everything going on there, and where they tested the atom bomb out as well at the Trinity site. A lot going on there. I believe that Epstein, whether he knew it or not, but I do believe he knew it, was part of what you talked about in terms of trying to bring forward this moon child. I really do believe that, which is Rosemary's Baby in a more updated version of it. That's got more of a Sangreal, um, Knights Templar bloodline lineage to it, which leads back to Solomon's Temple, obviously. So it all does connect. But The Moonchild was an Aleister Crowley book, very strange to read, but it was very similar to what Rosemary's Baby became. And then you've got all the weird things about what happens in Manhattan. A lot seems to happen in New York. They filmed a lot of that film outside where John Lennon was staying there, and they got shot on the doorsteps of that. And it was Dave Geffen who runs Hollywood, who met Yoko Ono at the hospital and basically smuggled her out. And they were recording a dual album, these two as well. It's very, very a lot going on this. A lot of people don't know the lady who played Rosemary, I believe, in the film. Not Sharon Tate, because that was later on, but she was like Sharon Tate was killed because she was Polanski's wife, and that was I believe, Rosemary's Baby related murder. But the lady that actually played Rosemary in the film, she was there, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, at the recording of one of the Beatles' later albums. So there's this kind of, we know they were interested in Crowley. There's this magic thing they're all trying to tap into quite clearly through music and stuff, but as you say, they're using the human body. Now, you brought up something called Tannin Iver before, which was really fascinating to me. Now, Tannin Iver, and Wayne could explain this better than I can, is the steed or the horse or the dragon, depending on which version you get, that took Lilith, who was the first wife of Adam, to meet Samael. And when they get together, so it was the connecting force that connected Samael to Lilith, they become the beast system. That's what I understand it as at the moment. And this to me is this Tannin Iver is possibly this nanotechnology that's going to try and bridge the gap within the human body to allow this being to, it would be a techno-possession, wouldn't it?
Essentially, that's what we're kind of looking at. Now, let me break this down in a little bit more easy to comprehend or easy to take in type of a system. Now, one of the best models we could look at for this concept of Tannin Iver is to look back at Egyptian mythology. And that seems to be one of the primary control tools as far as archetypes go in the year 2025 here that they'll be manipulating a lot this year, is these type of Middle Eastern or Egyptian ideas. So let's look at the story of Isis and Osiris. Well, Osiris was killed and cut into 14 parts, and his parts were scattered. So Isis went all around the land of Egypt and got all of his parts back and reassembled them to reanimate him. But one part was missing. The 14th part was missing. Now, 14, for those who pay attention to this stuff, is a very important number in esoteric terms. This is the number of the lost word of Freemasonry. And it relates to the missing phallus of Osiris, which was the 14th part that was missing. So she had to craft an artificial phallus for Osiris and reanimated him. And then she conceived Horus. Now, this is synonymous with this function of Tannin Iver. When you look at this and when you study this deeply, and this goes back to some of the teachings of the Kabbalah. And remember, we covered Kabbalah in an episode here. Much of Kabbalah is based in confusion, especially when it's spelled with a K. But there is the Kabbalah spelled with a Q that is commonly referred to in Hermetic circles as QBL. And this is said to have some basis of truth in it. So the notion being here from this story from Kabbalah is that this Tannin Iver is kind of the gateway, the bridge between the combining together of the spirit of Lilith with the spirit of Samael, and they have to use a secondary vehicle to do so, and that would be the human being. And this is where you get into esoteric and occult and magical concepts like the succubus and the incubus. And this is important to understand because this has to do with this concept of Tannin Iver, whereas they want to use and utilize the human form to bring into fruition new spiritual children born in the spirit, things that don't belong in this reality. And it is said, according to the Kabbalistic legend, that when Tannin Iver actually is implemented in this way, and the spirits of Samael and Lilith are able to mate through this bridge, through this gateway of Tannin Iver, this brings about destruction into reality. And that's why they were separated. That's why the phallus or the creative force was taken away from Samael, also known as Osiris in the Egyptian myth, so that they can't destroy the world when they combine together. When they do that, that they have to seek some other way to do so. Now, in the Bible, these two figures of Samael and Lilith relate to what are known as Leviathan and Behemoth. And you'll notice a lot of this has this very much serpentine type of an archetype behind it: the serpent, the snake, the dragon. And there are many occult brotherhoods of the dragon or the brotherhood of the snake out there, or different iterations thereof. And this is important because this ties back to this whole San Grail idea that you were just speaking of, Richard, the Grail, the Holy Grail. Tannin Iver, in essence, is one of the Holy Grail type concepts here that's given. This is drawing down these spirits, Leviathan, Behemoth, Samael, Lilith, into combination into this mating ritual to bring about this new moonchild type idea. Now, I'm crossing the bounds of different esoteric systems here to try to give you a basis of what this is about, because regardless of what they call it in all of these different occult systems, they're all describing the same things. And that's where we find a lot of the commonalities. So the Rosicrucians have different terms for this. The OTO has different terms. Each of these organizations have their own language that they use to describe this, but it's all essentially the same thing. So we have this notion of this combining, this drawing down these spirits, drawing down the spirits. And you'll notice some of this type of language turns up in modern witchcraft or Wicca, the drawing down of the moon and the moon spirit and things like this. This is what the moonchild idea is about. It's about creating an artificial container based on the human being, which contains the divine spark, and replacing that divine spark with something else. And this is the concept of the homunculus from alchemical thought. This is the concept of the moonchild when you go at it from the Crowleyan ideas and the Thelemic ideas and things like this. And many a magician in the past has attempted to do this. And now they're trying to implement technology to bring this about, because technology, in their view, is just another tool of the magician. And this is important. People oftentimes will try to separate the two, technology or technological progression, or science, as they call it, more rightly called scientism. They try to separate that in their minds from magic, but it's all one and the same thing. Thus, why I have titled my first book and my channel and my podcast and everything else, The Alchemical Tech Revolution. It's the combining of old alchemy with modern technology. It's all one and the same thing. And that's what people need to understand. Physics and metaphysics are two sides of the same coin. It's all being leveraged by these power brokers of this world that understand these things and want the rest of us to think of them as nonsensical. They leverage these metaphysical concepts in certain ways and combine it with the more mainstream accepted scientific ways of doing things. And they bring about synthesis through this. And that's what it's primarily about. And this is all a type of magic when it gets down to it. Now, if people are interested in learning some more details about how it is that many people have come to understand magic as a real tool, look at the works of Dr. Stephen Skinner. He approaches it from a very analytical viewpoint, and he says, we don't understand exactly why these things work, but he has formulated things that show it does work, and he's done scientific experimentation to show it does work. If you follow this procedure, it works. They don't know exactly why. They don't know what forces are involved or why it does work, but it certainly does get results. And this is documented throughout the course of time. Why do you think these things still exist in our modern era? Why do you think that there are people that are still pursuing these paths in these secret society groups and occult fraternities? It's because they can leverage energies, however you want to view it, to get things done and do things and make actual changes in the physical reality we live in with it. It works. They don't necessarily know why or understand what it is that they're unleashing here, but they understand they get results. So that's the important concept here we need to come to terms with. So this Stargate thing is no different. It's just a new veneer on the face of the old magic, trying to reestablish what it looks like in the modern era. So they'll call it science, but it's all the same old thing.
What's really fascinating, to back up what Wayne said there, if you look into the Sangreal bloodline and their use of the Rosemary's Baby or Moonchild as a or homunculus or whatever this vessel likes to but wants to be called, or they call it. You look at the Rosemary's Baby dress that Kate Middleton was wearing with her third child, and also Diana was wearing with Harry, which I originally thought it was William, but it's Harry. So they're wearing the exact replica. I mean, especially Kate's one of this Rosemary's Baby dress. The symbology is there that they're trying to pass on this soul of some sorts, either allow one in or pass one down the bloodline, hold a bloodline. There's definitely something to this. And then you see the royals were connected, obviously, through Andrew to Epstein. There is something going on here that's far deeper and darker that's involved with this stuff. And then you bring in the transhumanist lot, the technocrats lot, and then you look at Stargate and you see who it's funded by. I mean, there's a group that I found today that no one else had spoken about, and it was called MGX, and it's Abu Dhabi's MGX helps bankroll Trump's 100 billion AI plan. So this is near Saudi Arabia, obviously. It's one of the United Arab Emirates countries, and they've put billions into this Stargate project, but they also put billions into OpenAI, SoftBank Group Corp, and Oracle Group Corp. They've also put money into OpenAI, XAI, and many others that are all involved, and Microsoft. So when these lot are pretending to argue amongst each other, what you're finding is that they all swim in the same funding pools. And then you look at the ideology, and this is what most people miss, and this is what we want to bring up on this show. People will stop at the funding. People will stop at the but where do these ideas come from that they want to fund into existence? No one's asking that other than us and a few other people like David, and like they've got an ideology. They've got an agenda to bring out. The money is a conduit to bring this about. We know the Solomon's Temple and everything is involved, but it's not, the forefront is not the money and the funding and they're all in it together. It's what's the ideology behind these people? What do they believe in? Now, I've got Ray Kurzweil. I'll just read this from David's book, the Trap, one of the newer ones. And this is what Ray Kurzweil said. He's former Google exec. Our thinking will be a hybrid of biological and non-biological thinking. Humans will be able to extend their limitations and think in the cloud. We're going to put gateways to the cloud in our brains, star gateways. We're going to gradually merge and enhance ourselves. In my view, that's the nature of being human. We transcend our limitations. Well, that's, the most anti-human agenda that you could worry about. But that's Ray Kurzweil from Google.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting ideas. I just want to tie some threads together here about some things you mentioned. Now, you talked about Rosemary's Baby and the dress, of course. Well, that dress was a red dress, wasn't it? Am I correct?
Sorry, my little boy's shouting in the background. What did you say there?
I said that the dress, the Rosemary's Baby dress, is a red dress, correct?
It is a red dress with a white trim around the top, yep.
This is an invocation of the Scarlet Woman, represented in the Book of Revelation, who rides the beast. This is the beast system. What is this beast? Let's tie some threads together. Remember, we were talking about Tannin and Iver and how this is the combination of Leviathan and Behemoth from the Bible. That is the beast. That's what this beast system represents. And of course, it's telling you who it is that's guiding this, the Scarlet Woman. That concept, it's about this reunification into the Tannin Iver idea of Kabbalism and bringing about this new world order through the use of this beast system. And of course, they're going to use AI as a tool to get it done. And we see that it is the Stargate concept that's represented there. If you want to read the symbolism in the Book of Revelation, at least that's my interpretation of it. Now, there's a lot of people who are kind of biblical literalists, and I don't think that's the right cipher to use to translate the Book of Revelation, because I don't think things in the Book of Revelation are going to come to fruition in the ways that people expect. I think it's going to look a little different. Even things right down to the Antichrist. Is this going to actually be a specific human being, or is it more of a concept? Is it more of the first fruits of this combination of AI and the human being as a vessel to bring forth this notion of the moon child, the concept of transhumanism, the transhumanist singularity, the first fruits thereof of transhumanism? I think that might be a more accurate way of interpreting that, but I reserve the right to be wrong. And that's the important thing. This is just the interpretation that I see when I look at all of this stuff and I combine all of these fields of study together. This seems to be what is culminating the synthesis of this beast system, the Scarlet Woman riding the beast. And the beast is this AI control grid that they do want to set up, and this advent of transhumanism. And of course, Ray Kurzweil perfectly embodies the promises of transhumanism in this way. They see it as a way to transcend our human limitations and become, in no uncertain terms, the gods of this place, and to achieve physical immortality here, which is the ultimate goal of these spiritual essences, powers, beings, intelligences, forces, whatever you want to refer to them as, in coming into incorporation here in this reality, incarnating here. That's what they want to do. That's why they seek to use the human vessel to do that. And this is also why AI on its own cannot stand in the way to do this. It has to be combined with the human being. If you understand this from the occult perspective and the esoteric perspective, they need the gateway, the Stargate, to get it done. And the AI, in and of itself, cannot house a spirit. And this is an important truth people need to come to grips with. That's why an AI, an artificial intelligence, in and of itself, will never become sentient, will never actually become conscious and be a living thing or a proto living thing. It requires an animus, a spirit within, that divine spark, like we as human beings have. It does not have that. It is anti life, it is the antithesis of life. And therefore, it's about, once again, this occult notion of the polarization and the combination together into synthesis of opposites, the combination of opposites, the fusing of opposites into one. And this is another common theme and archetype that's used through all of this. So it wants to bring this anti-life essence together with the essence of life here to create a synthesis here in this reality, a physical synthesis that can be indwelt by these spirit children of Lilith and Samael, in a sense, these demonic forces, if you want to refer to it as such, bringing into incarnation here in this physical reality. And this actually falls back on some other hermetic ideas that maybe we could touch on here, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think the big question everybody listening to this will be going, what would happen to me if you're plugged in, your body's plugged in to elsewhere? There's another entity, another energy, a negative energy. If we're the positive coming through, what would happen to you as a soul? I think as most people will get that gut feeling of wanting to ask that question is, where do I go if they're plugging something else into my body? And maybe we're already there, and many people are already being that. We've heard about possessions for a very long time. This is a techno possession. We're seeing these technocrats really believe this stuff. This Curtis Yarvin guy come out. I mean, he's been around a long time, but I'd never heard of him until a couple of weeks ago when Derek Bros, he's a fantastic journalist, wrote about him. And this guy is funded by Peter Thiel. He's an influence on JD Vance and Donald Trump. And he talks about his patchwork society, and it is just the technocratic society. And he's even joking about liquidating humans. And one of the outcomes was that humans that do survive would be put in basically a prison cell, but they would be given AI and virtual realities to keep them all compliant. So Black Mirror stuff. And this guy is a funded by Teal and an influence on these other guys. So that's why it's so important to see their ideology. They're maniacs. But what would happen then? Like if we're pushed to the side, the soul, the creative soul, is pushed to the side. What do they think is going to happen with these kind of mixed bodies, but also this other energy running through it? It makes no sense. And also they're not creative. So that will die out eventually because it can't recreate. So it has all sorts of weird flaws and faults in it. And I suppose that's why they want to live forever, which is Hollywood, become a star, eternal. That's the eternal flame and the eternal spark of what Statue of Liberty is holding. The symbology is absolutely everywhere. But what, Wayne, have you come across in your research that would say would happen to the human, well, the connection because we see it slightly differently, but the connection to the creative force that we are, what would happen to that if it's plugged in elsewhere? I think people would really be worried in a sense.
They should be worried, because this is actually something that's massively important, and I'm actually in the process of writing a new book that touches upon this idea. So what would happen to the ontological self, the I am within you, if you are replaced by one of these spirits that comes to manifestation here through the connection of yourself with the AI control grid, your human form with the AI control grid, and you are forced out, because essentially that's what transhumanism is. It's eugenics without coercion, as pro-transhumanists have described it. So this promise of being able to upload your consciousness to a machine and live forever, it is a lie. And those at the very tippy top of the power structure understand that. They know that. So essentially what will happen is, this is the great culling, this whole transhumanist notion. So they will maybe successfully present some people, okay, these people look as if they were able to successfully transfer their consciousness into the machine, into the cloud, and live forever and transfer their consciousness into various containers or whatever, vehicles, bodies, virtual realities. It looks like this person that I know, and it acts just like this person I know, and it seems to be this person I know, but it's just an artificial intelligence program simulating that. And this is where simulation theory and stuff comes in again. So when you see that, it's not the actual ontological self, the I am, the spirit of man in that. In the process of transferring this consciousness to the machine, as they talk about in transhumanism, the human being will be destroyed in that process. So the soul, the animus, will leave the body and go to whatever spiritual domain that is beyond here, or spiritual world that is beyond here. Now, here's where it gets a little bit dark. Is when this happens, it seems to me, I have concerns that when this happens, when the human spirit actually leaves during this transhumanist singularity event, when it is pushed out and the new entity, the new spirit, the new animus comes in, this artificial one, these spiritual children of Tannin Iver, the Tannin Iver concept, the combination of Lilith and Samael in this way. When this enters in and pushes the other soul out, what happens to that soul? Well, it would seem to me, from things that I've looked at and I've studied, and I'll give credit where credit's due, the works of Tracy Twyman have actually put me on exploring this path. She was a brilliant researcher, even though she was tied to some very dark things. She did a brilliant job in articulating some of this information and putting it out there. So essentially what happens with this, and the whole concept is, and you could find some of this through different archetypes that permeate different occult systems and mythologies. There has to be a replacement for this dark spirit that comes in here. They have the job of holding aloft the spiritual worlds separated and apart from one another. Think in terms of the myth of Atlas holding the world up. Well, he's not just holding the sky up in place. This, to many high-level occultists, symbolizes the holding apart the heavens and the world, the earth, and the underworld. These worlds separated, keeping them separated. So there's another legend that goes, and I'm trying to remember the details thereof. I'm still reading into this, and I don't know if I have all of the names correct or anything with this. But there's a story wherein Atlas wanted to leave this position, or the representative of Atlas in the corresponding myth wanted to leave this position of holding the worlds in place, and he was given the opportunity, but in order for that to happen, he had to draw somebody else down there to take his place, to hold it in place, and then he could leave. And the onus was on the next being to hold that in place. So essentially, it's like being imprisoned in the underworld. And this is the concept that I think is important. And when you look at the ties, and I think we discussed this early on, between the white cube and the black cube, the New Jerusalem, and the black cube, which is said to be the city of Enoch, built in the underworld in the land of Nod by Cain. then you begin to see a little more clearly how the division has taken place. And that's currently the book that I'm working on, trying to get put together in a linear type fashion to express these ideas in a way that's easily understandable and digestible by people. Because in essence, what I think we are beginning to see is not only the fruition of things talked about in the book of Revelation, but we're beginning to see the worlds collapsing in on one another as they attempt to get somebody else or to get some other spiritual power or force to hold the worlds apart. And this is a concept referred to in various mythologies as either the world pole or the world mountain. This is what holds the heavenly realms and the underworld realms apart from the physical realm in which we're in. So you have this holding aloft the spiritual worlds, and you have to think outside the box to understand this. This is talking about perhaps different planes of existence. And if we're beginning to see perhaps the collapsing in of this from this outside essence of the underworld or the cosmic void, the waters above and the waters below, as described in the Bible, and there's a lot of cosmology that goes into this way of thinking. If this is starting to trickle in, then things are going to start looking really weird. And I think we're experiencing some of that now because this timeless realm outside is beginning to intermingle and commingle with this physical, time-based world that we live in. And things are getting weird. And we have phenomena occurring like the Mandela effect. And I think this is a plausible explanation as to what is going on. It's the seeping in of this primordial chaos that exists in the waters above and waters below, as described in the Bible, coming into this reality at this time. And when you have a timeless realm mixing with a realm based in time, things in that realm based in time begin to look weird. And of course, this ties back to Saturnian ideas as well. So there's a lot here to unpack. And this is more than we could possibly conceivably cover in just one short episode here. But I just wanted to put that stuff out there for people to understand perhaps what it is that's at the heart of all of this. It's about replacing the human essence, the human soul here in this physical world, and exiling the human soul to the underworld or the land of Nod to hold aloft the other worlds and take the place there. These are the world pillars that hold the world up, the foundations of the world. Somebody has to hold those in place. And right now, it's some of these intelligences, forces, beings, however you want to refer to them, that are the original fallen angelic beings, and they don't want to do that anymore. They want to be gods. So they want to actually have themselves change places with humanity here. So it's a dark way of thinking, but I think, and I speculate, and like I said, I reserve the right to be wrong on this stuff, but it seems to me from all the things I've looked at, it's beginning to make sense when you look at it and you understand this perspective. And I think this is the perspective of those at the top levels of the power structure. Because when you understand that these dark occultists at the top of the power structure in this world, although they are human beings, they are guided and directed by outside forces. What are these outside forces? Well, these are these very fallen angelic beings, spirits, intelligences, things that are trapped currently in the underworld, holding aloft the world mountain, that want out and to switch places. And they're guiding and directing these people at the topmost levels to bring that about and into fruition. It is kind of an insidious thing when you look at it. And it is a dark type of way of seeing things. But I suspect there's truth in those very ideas that I'm presenting here. The intention is there by those at the top of the power structure in this place. So when we understand that, we can begin to see more clearly that this is a spiritual battle. It's much deeper than just a bunch of political machinations and maybe the advancements of technologies to bring about changes in this world. Well, what is the ends? To these people, the ends always justify the means. So the ends is this switching places, this exiling humanity to this underworld, this world of punishment where they are to be burdened with the labor of holding the worlds aloft. Well, those other ones that actually violated natural law and natural created laws, the creator's will, that were exiled there as their due punishment for their treachery and their trading places, they want to replace themselves with us in that way. And I know it's a bridge too far for a lot of people, but I assure you there are people in very high positions of power in this world that believe in many of these occult concepts, and the things they do to act upon their beliefs will affect us all. So whether you think it's hokum or not, it's irrelevant. You need to understand it, because it's the intention that is everything.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Whether we believe it or not really doesn't matter, as these people in these positions of prominence that are working for perhaps entities elsewhere that are very much in belief of this. That's why I made a film with David called The Rituals of the Elite, and why they do what they do. They're tapping into this other world. They've been doing it for thousands of years, maybe hundreds of thousands of years, understanding how to do this sort of thing. And it's been made to seem stupid and silly, but these people very much do these rituals. So we've seen it in Bohemian Grove of just one example of a mock ritual, apparently, but they do these things and have been doing these for thousands of years. They're tapping into someone else. There's something else. They're serving other masters. What is also fascinating is that we know, I've been looking a bit more into quantum physics at the moment just to try and get a grasp on this. And we know that on a quantum level, that we are co-creating this reality in some way. So we are changing, things turn up as that we believe them to be turning up. So the world is appearing as we believe it to be. So in a way, we're kind of co-creating this. So what happens if you pull the plug on the creative being coming into this universe? There's no one to co-create with, and there's no one to turn up to in a way for. So we're almost like seeing the world on a quantum level. We are seeing the world that we are expecting, I suppose, is the best way to put it, which we've been brainwashed or controlled or contrived to expect. And that's turning up in the way in the material world as you would expect it to do. The split, is it the split particle, not the split particle, split mirror uh, experiment showed this, that when you weren't watching, it turns up as a
It's
wave.
it's called the double slit experiment. Sorry, Richard.
Double
I
slit
know what
experiment.
you're
That's
talking
it. Yep.
about.
Yep. Yep, sorry, yeah, the double slit experiment. I should have remembered that, only looking at it the other day. So it turns up either a particle or wave, depending on whether it's being watched. So we are the watchers. When they talk about the watchers, I believe that that's kind of a nod and a wink to us. We are, at least at some level, the watchers that are creating this place. I'm not saying we are the creators. I'm saying that we are attached to the creator and a part of it. I agree with Wayne on that sense. We're a microcosm of the macrocosm. But what happens if you unplug that? The world would, well, the reality would collapse, because there's nothing in there to turn up to see, and there's no co-creation going on, is there, Wayne? So, like, even on another level, if we take what you're saying and what's happening to the creative soul, that input's been pushed aside for this other dark entity. Well, there's no creation of this place. It becomes something else. That space that's made, for want of a better word, is going to be turn up in the guise of how this dark entity wants it to be. Therefore, you are switching into another reality if you unplug the human, because there's no earth as we know it anymore. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And this is the total simulation scenario that they try to make us believe that we already live in. I don't buy that we live in a simulation. I'm sorry, it just doesn't add up. But that is the advent they want to bring about. And this ties back to some bits of Hermetic thought, the four worlds of Hermetic thought. We have, according to their language, we have prima causa, we have materia prima, materia secunda, and materia tertia, which is the earth and is physical manifestation here.
Mhm.
So all created things, all ideas start with prima causa. This is the highest world that's accessible here to the human being, and this is referred to in other cosmological systems as the mind. Now, the mind, especially in the Rosicrucian system, is said to be the baseline from which manifestation starts to occur in the physical world here. And it's a reflection of the higher spiritual worlds above. There are three higher spiritual worlds above, according to their system, from which all things emanate. And they come to the mirror, which is the human mind, which is the mind. And then they step down from prima causa, which would be the mind, and this would be the connection to the spirit side. And then it goes to materia prima, which would be congruent with what they would call, in certain terms, maybe the astral realm, or what's the other one that they call it? I'm kind of getting mixed up with the language because I've tried to compare and contrast a lot of these different systems, but we'll say the astral. So it first begins to manifest astrally from the mind, stepping down into the astral, and then from the astral, it steps down into what they call materia secunda, which is the etheric plane. And then from there into materia tertia, which is earth, physical reality, physical manifestation as we understand it. So it goes through this stepping down process. And where does it come from? Well, it comes from the creative capacity of this divine spark of God that we as human beings have, that these other entities do not have, because God created man in his image. He did not create the angelic host or any of those other things in his image. So this is something unique to mankind, and this is why those other beings and powers and intelligences, those divine hierarchies or those different creative hierarchies, why they are envious of man and why they want to have that and come into physical manifestation here. Because we have that divine spark. We are made in the image of God. We are different. They don't have that. And they want that. So they're trying to hijack that. And what they're attempting to do with this is build what's called materia quarta in the old Hermetic system. It's actually a fourth type of manifestation here instead of earth. Remember, we're talking earth is materia tertia, the stepping down process. They want to further step things down into a split off of the earth into two separate forms. We'll have, of course, materia tertia as we know it here now. That's what we are in. But they're attempting to build this materia quarta, which is also known as the world of shells. The world of shells. Empty vessels. Devoid of the divine spark. Devoid of spirit. Simply form and based in gross materiality. Physicality. That's the whole notion that's being pushed by our modern science. Everything could be explained away as a cause and effect sequence in this physical material world. All things, according to the scientists or those that practice scientism, all things, all phenomena could be explained away as some physical cause and effect sequence. Even things like consciousness, which they try to describe as the byproduct of the electrochemical activity of the brain and brainstem. And that's what they base all of their science upon. They don't want to look into the invisible worlds or the spiritual side of this. They are trying to steer everybody into the creation of this simulation, the world of shells. And you could all look that up and see what it says about this. Rudolf Steiner described this as the spirit of Ahriman coming into full manifestation, this dividing into gross materiality and neglecting or discarding the spiritual concerns. And this is an aspect of Antichrist, as I view it. So they're attempting to build this simulation world, this virtual world, this augmented reality world, and they're using technology to get it done. But there's also these occult forces at play that are steering and directing and guiding this. And they're attempting to build this subplane of physical reality here called the world of shells, the simulation. That's why so many people are hung up on simulation theory right now. That's exactly why. Because that's what they're trying to bring into manifestation and creation here. And this is, as Michael Hoffman describes it, the reign of dead matter. And we've been slowly building towards this through the course of time. And especially in the modern era with the advent of things like the straw man identity and the legal fiction and all of these different things that we accept in this world, these non-real things that we accept as real representations of ourselves here. And that's it's leading to ultimately is this acceptance of this world of shells where these non-human, non-creative entities will begin to manifest physically and try to be the gods of this place, though they lack the creative force. But I do think they intend to keep some actual human beings around so that they can institute changes. And once again, this ties back to the reasoning why AI can't do it on its own, and that's why they want to be able to merge with the human being, the human body, the human vessel itself with this, because they know that it's all going to collapse in on itself, and it's all going to do so. It's a great lie. It's another Tower of Babel moment that's coming, in my estimation. The weight of it cannot support itself. It's going to collapse catastrophically in on itself at some point, even if it does succeed to some level. So it's going to be only a very temporary thing. And this is described in the book of Revelation, of course, as well, in various different terms. So there's going to be this short advent where it looks like the bad team wins, but it's ultimately going to end very badly for them. So let's put it that way. But the essence behind it is the intention of these spiritual powers, entities, forces, whatever you want to refer to them, the intention of them using very dark human beings to get things done in this world and steering people towards this ultimate simulation that they want to create to put us in this virtual reality. So are you ready, player one? I'll ask that with the pun all fully intended there, because that's exactly what they want to build in the near future.
It's a really interesting concept, isn't it, Wayne? Because, like we were saying before, if you tie this back to the quantum physics, if you put the idea in the mind of the human who is the vessel to create on a quantum level, that's what they get. So all of these movies and these films are having a almost a predictive, not programming or just programming what could come about. So it's really fascinating to see what they put in the human mind is what enough people believe in it. It starts to bring that about. So what you were just saying there, if you believe you already lived in a simulation, you'll enough people like an egregore will bring that about eventually. It's really fascinating, as you would say, and we know on a quantum level, if that's to be believed anyway, is that we are creating this. So they're going to use our minds, which would be the Tannin Iver, the link, to create the world that they want. And I think that's the grand was it great idea or grand idea that George Bush was coming out with? He was talking about the great idea or the grand idea would be the new world order would be getting us to create it. But first we need to believe in it first, because we're the creators of it. And then when you unplug the creators of it, what happens? And as you say, it's the shells. It exists in its own entity, but nothing grows, nothing lives, nothing creates. It just exists. And I think that's a very good example of saying what the Matrix actually is. The movies, it's a shell of something else. And I find that really fascinating. So maybe the Gnostics were trying to warn us about that, if we can believe that the Gnostics even believe that, because that was written by their enemies half the time anyway. So who knows what's true? But it's really, really fascinating to see all these sub levels. But what keeps coming back is that they need the human being to create their own, to create this environment. We are a necessary evil for them in this situation. They cannot do it without us. And then once we learn that on enough level, we don't have to do any of this stuff, but we just keep arguing over small little incidents where we just disagree on a name or a date, down to what happened in the past and whether this happened or what that happened. And we're like, what do we want the outcome to be? We all just want to get on with our lives and have a nice time with our family. That's what we want. Well, how do we create that? Because we don't want to create what these guys are creating. And by doing so, and even saying that we already exist in it, implies that it's too late. It's you know what I mean? It's a really, really insidious agenda that's all in the mind.
It is an insidious agenda, and it does actually come from this. It comes from thought. What are our thoughts about that? Well, that's why they use entertainment as a key vehicle to bring new ideas, to bring these ideas to the forefront of people's minds, to try to create it in this reality. It's a type of vampirizing our creative force that we have, because we are created in the image of God. Therefore, we have creative abilities, much like God the Creator does. And it's a unique position that we have in this divine hierarchy of things. Those other essences and intelligences don't have that, and they're jealous of that. That's why they want to try to hijack the human being in order to do that, so that they could attain that ability themselves and usurp the creator. Now, they're delusional in that way of thinking. If they think they could get that done, they certainly cannot. But we see how those social controllers of this world, they leverage our own minds and our own creative abilities against us by presenting us this stuff in forms of entertainment, by implanting ideas, by trying to steer the public opinion in many ways. And that's why media is such a big tool to be used. That's why they spend so much money and effort into putting media out there and elevating Hollywood stars, the 1,000 points of light, like George Bush referred to. And this is all very occultic as well. So we have this leveraging of our own minds to bring into being the creation of this reality that's wanted by only a select few, and especially by these dark powers that want to be able to manifest here. So that's why we're presented a lot of this stuff. And it is kind of an insidious thing. But what we need to understand is we do have hope, and we can fight back against this and create the reality we want. And what is that? And how do we do that? Well, the answer, as hokey as it may sound, is love. Love one another. Show love, compassion, kindness, care to one another. Be the change you want to see in this world. Do that which is right. I live my life by one simple tenet. And if you do this, then I think you're actually good. If you know something's the right thing to do, do it. It's as simple as that. And if we all did that, the world would be a better place, and we would be the change we want to see in the world. And that spreads like a contagion. So we could use positive ideas to spread like a contagion as much as negative ideas. The problem is the controllers of media and all of these different outlets we have are primarily negative in their presentation to us, and therefore it affects our mind and affects our creative ability, and our creative energies get funneled to that reality that they want to create rather than the reality that we want to create. But the good news is being aware of these concepts and these ideas, and knowing that our thoughts and our observation can affect our reality. And that's the important concept that you brought up about quantum physics. I don't entirely agree with quantum physics. I think it's a contrived model that they're trying to utilize just to quantify things, thus the name quantum, in order to exert control over them and influence them. I don't think that's really how it works. I don't think everything could be explained away as a fundamental particle, but that's what they try to do with quantum physics. But despite that, they have proven that the mere observation of something changes it. And that's an important idea, and that derives back to the human mind once again. So they leverage our own minds against us to create the reality they want, and we can fight back against that and create the reality we want. And how do we do that? Well, tune out, turn off the TV, don't watch the new movie. That kind of stuff is one way to do it. Don't pay attention to the news. Just go out in the natural world around you, go out in your community, and you'll see a different world there than what's presented to you on the television in the nightly news. And if you think about that and understand that basic concept, then you'll begin to see that sometimes the world looks like a brighter and better place if you tune out all of that programming. And it is called programming for a reason, because they want you to think the world is a scary, dangerous, and evil place. And in many regards, it's become that because they've convinced enough people of that, first of all. And then it causes this type of creation of what you might call an egregore type thing, or a spirit unto itself that begins to take hold of people's minds in other places and captures the essence of that evil and brings it into fruition. But if you were to ignore all the things on your TV screen and just go out in your local community, chances are you're going to run into some nice neighbors that you like, and you talk to them and it's pleasant exchange, and you're not going to see all this evil out there in the real world. So when you understand that, that's one of the things we could do. Tune out from the programming, and that will help immensely.
Yeah, it's just play your part, isn't it? Be the change you want to see in the world, and exactly you just said there, just do your bit, and we do have that connection there for now, to our common sense and knowing what's right from wrong. That is something that they don't have, or at least try to ignore. So it's really important that we know this stuff and we come to sort of like the common understanding that we are far more powerful than they've let us believe, but not in an airy fairy new agey way, in a actual practical ways that they're getting us to build our own prison. And that's a great actual revelation, because we don't have to do it then, do we? They haven't got the ability to do it on their own. They need us, and that's fantastic. That means we're in charge. It's been a great podcast. There's more I want to talk about, but I think we've fit enough in for an hour. Where can people find your work and follow what you're doing, Wayne?
They can find me at www.alchemicaltechrevolution.com. Everything I do is centralized on my website there. So that's where they could find me. Where could the good people find you, Richard?
They can find most of my video work is on iconic.com, and you can find me on X, Rich there. And my Substack is Some May Conspire. I need to catch up with that. I need to write a new one of them. I'm finally feeling better after a bout of illness. But this has been an absolutely fantastic and uplifting and positive episode. I really thank you for your time, Wayne, and this information, because it's very empowering on a proper level, in the sense that we are always in control. They need us to commit suicide, quite frankly, and we don't have to do it. And that's the good news, is that we're in charge.
Absolutely. Much appreciated, Richard. Always enjoy doing these. And this has been an awesome project so far for the both of us. And I think a lot of good information is being put out there for people to latch onto and take it a step further, perhaps. Things like you and I can't do. I'm very limited in what I can do. But if we get these ideas to circulate out there and enough people resonate with them and begin to understand things at a deeper level, then they could empower themselves to do something about it. And that's where we're at.
Absolutely. Be the change you want to see in the world. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, guys. Please share the podcast and the video, and we appreciate all your support. Take care. Goodbye.